Welcome to Stop the Fight. And today we're recapping this weekend's action. Let's go!
Don't brag about taking my side piece! Don't brag about taking my side piece, no!
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong, man. Good boy.
We had a good weekend. We had a really good weekend. If everyone bet in a similar way like we discussed last episode, then I think we all made a lot of money. The over 7.5 paid in the Devin Haney, Jorge Linares match. And Nonito Donaire did what we all thought was possible. He stopped Obali in the third round in an exciting fight. But we'll talk about it right now. Let's talk, obviously, the big fight, the big one. Devin Haney, Jorge Linares. I think we have a few questions for the young man Haney. He won. He won pretty wide. I thought the scores were too close. It was 116, 112 twice, and 115, 113. That was too close. That would have, had Linares scored a knockdown in one of the rounds that he lost, this fight goes a completely different way. So I thought it was wide. I really did think it was wide. I think those score totals were way too close. I think Linares won maybe, I think if you're super generous, 116, 112. If you're super generous. But I think really 117, 111 is a proper scorecard there. So what did he do right, what did he do wrong? Both Devin Haney and Linares. Well, Devin Haney, especially early on, was in complete control with his jab. He landed it at will. He really did. Linares seemed to have similar hand speed, but his feet were significantly slower. Devin Haney was able to land the jabs, step in, land that jab, step out. Linares couldn't throw back. Linares would, of course, find some success here and there with it, but he was never in the position. I think Devin Haney kept moving well and didn't give Linares he never stood still long enough for Linares to throw his punches. So, Linares' hand speed was more or less a non-factor for the majority of the fight. Now, even early on, we did see some problems with Devin Haney. I think in the first 3 rounds or so, Linares landed maybe 6, maybe 7 clean check left hooks on Devin Haney. Clean. And I mentioned to my brother watching it with me that this can spell big trouble going into the later rounds, because you can't. It's one thing when you're getting, kind of like grazing shots here and there as you're moving. Linares was landing clean check left hooks on Haney. As a matter of fact, you see Haney's nose was even a little bit red, like the side of his face. It was actually a little bit red in the 3rd and 4th round already, simply because of how many check left hooks he took. And like I said, I think it was about 7 clean ones or so. I haven't rewatched the fight. Just I remember thinking on the top of my head. I remember seeing 3 in one round, 3 in another round. I think 1 more miscellaneous checked hook. So Devin Haney, when he's moving and he's boxing, he's really good. The jabs are landing. He's in full control. Linares can throw. I think the punch differential was huge in terms of landed punches, but especially early on. But when he stood still against the fight of the caliber of Linares, he got hit, often enough. And you have to wonder whether he was doing this to prove to the fans that he can fight, which he shouldn't do. Some people, time out here for a second. Not everyone has equal gifts. Like Devin Haney's blessed with superb speed, good defensive understanding of the game, and superb speed both in his feet and in his hands. But he is not blessed with that kind of power. He's just not. He has respectable power. He does, but not the kind of power that you'd want to be trading with. Absolutely not. And absolutely not with the kind of fighter like Linares. And as we'll talk about it a little bit later, but as we saw in the second half of the fight, it came to bite him in the ass. So Devin Haney just needs to come to the understanding that he is not Mike Tyson. He's not Golovkin. He's not Canelo. He's not Kovalev. He's not those fighters. He does not have that attribute. Some people get lucky and they're really tall and lanky and like Wilder, and some people are short and stubby like Andy Ruiz. They're going to fight differently because they have different attributes. Nonito Donaire can just rely on his left hook a lot of the times, and especially at that weight class, it's a moneymaker. Devin Haney doesn't have that. Yes, he had that huge knockout over Antonio Moran, but this is against a significantly lower opposition than Linares. You know, Linares got stopped 5 times in his career. All 5 losses prior to this Haney decision loss were stoppage losses. Lomachenko, who's a small 135-pounder, was able to stop him. Devin Haney, like, yeah, there were a couple times he looked like he made Linares uncomfortable, for sure. And he kind of maybe hurt him a little bit, but he wasn't able to quite, display that power though he wanted to, and it hurt him. By exchanging in those shots, especially in that, I think it was the 9th or 10th round, he was walking back to the corner. He took, I think, like 3 or 4 punch combination, and he started stumbling walking back. His legs were lost for the next round. He was lucky that he banked in all those rounds and took a little bit of the steam off Linares. So in the second half, Linares didn't have that kind of pop. But if this was a fresher Linares, that could have been over for Haney. He was absolutely hurt. If Linares had more in the gas tank, I think it was in the 10th or 11th round that Haney kind of survived. It would have been over. Linares was lucky. This was a 35-year-old Linares. Very lucky. I mean, Linares looked pretty good. This is nothing to take away from Linares. Again, not every fighter. As a matter of fact, no one's been able to hurt Haney so far. Obviously, Gamboa had moments of success, but like minimal. But Linares, it just speaks to the caliber of fighter that he actually is, that he was able to make this a competitive fight, even though he was getting washed early on. I think after 6 rounds, I had it, or after 7 rounds, I had it 6-1 for Haney. But Linares stood in the game. He kept trying to find openings, and eventually he did. Like I said, he landed in the end of the 9th. I want to say he landed a combination which very much hurt Devin Haney. He stumbled to his corner, and even in the 12th and the 11th and the 10th, all those rounds, Haney was kind of in survival mode. I think he actually won the 11th in survival mode, maybe, but. We have, so, and on the better side, we're happy. We won. The fight lasted 7.5 rounds. That's how I felt it would. Devin Haney, as much as everyone wants to believe, as much as he wants to believe he can stop people, he really can't. And if he couldn't get Linares out of there, who many fighters get out of there, I think he just doesn't have the kind of pop to bring out world championship level fighters. So whenever Haney's fighting, I think it's always the safe bet to take the over. It's just always a safe bet. And I think from now on, you're going to get ridiculous over, something like 10.5, which, again, not the best, but whatever. It's obvious that Devin Haney's not stopping anyone at the world level. He's just not. Especially after Lomachenko, who's not really a power puncher at 135, was able to get Linares out of there and beat him down. And Haney, who's a significantly bigger fighter than Lomachenko, was not able to do so. What else do we have going on here? Oh, yeah, so Devin Haney, again, so he gets a decision. But where does he go from here? I mean, Linares saved his career, and Devin Haney should be able to lure more people in. The thing is, when you have, I don't even want to call this a subpar performance, because, again, this doesn't do justice to Linares, who is a very good, clearly world-level fighter. What this does, though, is it allows more fighters to take the risk of fighting Haney. So Haney was having a problem, is that he was neither a name like Lomachenko nor Teofimo, nor anyone else who's a monster at 135. He's not Gervonta Davis. He's this kind of unknown guy who's a very good boxer, doesn't really get hit, and not in the most super exciting fight. So why would you fight him? Like if you're somebody who's up and coming or one of the other champs, there's no reason to fight Devin Haney, because he may beat you very likely, and if you win, no one's there to see it. So at lightweight, Devin Haney now, I think, can lure more people in. Now, with him getting hurt like this, now Ryan Garcia may be like, well, hold up a second. I probably punch as hard, if not harder than Linares. I'm a fresher cat, probably faster. I can definitely fight Devin Haney. There are fights to be made. Devin Haney's now going to get paid more because he was shown to be vulnerable at the end of this fight. And this is just the way things work in boxing. Once Golovkin looked a little bit vulnerable, Canelo was right there. We're ready. We are ready. So, and this is like, people wait to find that flaw, that kind of like subpar fight that you may have, and they're ready to jump on it. So with this, I have a feeling Devin Haney's going to get a good fight coming up next, which is going to be great for him because I still think he can beat anyone at 135. Getting hurt in a few times against Linares does not mean you are a bad fighter or some of these guys are just going to wash you. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So Devin Haney should go on to do great things, and I actually look forward to seeing more of him. Hopefully he'll learn from this. One of the things, by the way, is it's on the top of my mind. One of the things he does is sometimes he throws a lazy right hand, kind of like a feel him out right hand. You see it comes out wide. Notice it a couple times, and Linares was setting up that hook right after the right hand gets thrown. So I think his corner will have to look at it and correct that mistake, but whatever. Well, now Jorge Linares. Jorge Linares buys himself another few fights, buys himself potentially another championship level fight. Because here he was fighting this master boxer Haney, and according to the judges, was, within one round of winning pretty much. He scores a knockdown in one of these rounds and, wins another round, and all of a sudden you have a completely different fight. So Linares is going to be many fighters that are almost at the world class level are going to want to fight him. So, maybe Ali Shelby, maybe, who knows? Maybe again, Gamboa Jr. If the fight with Teofimo is kind of close next week, Gamboa Jr. can easily fight Linares for a chance to come right back up there. Nakatani, Comey. This division is loaded. This is the best division in boxing. You look at this top 10, you look at this top 5, and it seems like everyone's a pound-for-pound fighter. And in the top 10, there's just a lot of really good fighters. Davis, Lopez, Lomachenko, Haney, Garcia, Comey, Nakatani, Gamboa, Shelby, Linares. This is a loaded division. So Jorge Linares is getting paid again. And he absolutely deserves it for this performance. He absolutely showed that he's a veteran who knows how to fight well, who can take these young champions into deep waters and test them. Because Haney wasn't what they call deep waters. That was it. You're hurt in the end in the championship rounds of a fight. That is the definition of deep waters. And Haney was able to come out. So Linares was that test that Haney had to get through. Haney passed the test, guys. I know you hear some people saying, Haney ain't shit. No. Haney is a very, very good fighter. A champion at this division. And just now he took another world-class fighter and beat him. Yes, he was hurt, but welcome to boxing. When the best fight the best, when everyone's fighting at the world-class level, there won't be too many undefeated records. We have to understand that. And I always bring this up. None of these UFC guys are undefeated. Why? Because the UFC is a gauntlet. Consistently, the fights that the fans want are made. Consistently. So, if you're fighting at the very top level, you're not going to go undefeated. You're just not. There's no way to do it. Someone's going to beat you. Welcome to the fight game. So, like I said, our bets held. The 7.5 was good. I think it was a minus 125 or something like that for the over 7.5, which is pretty good, almost even money. And now let's talk about the other money-making fight. Nonito Donaire versus Obali. I've said this before the fight. I harped on it on the last episode. Guys, Nonito Donaire should under no circumstances be a plus 200 underdog against a fighter at 117. No way. 118, sorry. At 118. No way. Plus 200? Are you guys out of your mind? Especially against a short fighter. A short or a southpaw fighter. We've seen what Nonito can do against Montiel all those years ago. We saw what he did against Inoue, a pound-for-pound top 3 guy. He had a close fight where he hurt Inoue numerous times in that fight. Now, of course, people are like, this was an undefeated fighter. I don't care. An undefeated fighter that fought a paltry level of opposition. Fought Inoue's brother, Villanueva, and I saw him against Rashid Warren. He looked pretty good, but not a guy. Like, if this was a minus 120, plus 100 kind of card, I'd still bet on Donaire, but at least it's reasonable. Kind of like a 50-50 fight. You can't make Donaire plus 200 when you're 5'3" and Donaire's 5'6". I already explained what the angles are like when you're southpaw. Donaire's best weapon is his left hook. It is insanely powerful, world-class level. Obali is exactly at the height needed for Donaire to get most leverage and most pop on it. Like the fight almost by physics doesn't make sense. Like Obali can almost never beat Donaire. Never. Because of how tall he is, because the fact that he's southpaw, and because Donaire is a tall, world-class puncher with his left hook. It always spells a recipe for disaster. Every single time Obali would get to the ropes in every hypothetical scenario, he gets knocked out. That's what would happen every single time. And because Donaire is big and strong, he would always get Obali to the ropes, and he would always knock him out. Always. This was one of the easiest calls I could have made. This was like predicting the sun's coming up tomorrow. Free money. The casino was giving you 3 times your money for free. So I mean, like, what was there to say? The knockout was, of course, awesome and spectacular looking, as most of Donaire's knockout were. I will say, though, Obali was fast and did land his fair share of punches on Donaire. Donaire's eyes were red and black and blue, so he definitely took some damage even in those short 3 rounds. He didn't look particularly hurt at any one point, but Obali did have respectable power. I think Donaire was slightly stunned at a point there, but maybe he lost, or maybe the first round. But the fight was over in the third. In the second round, Donaire knocks him down with a left hook, of course. And at the end of the round, right after the bell sounds, he again has a monster left hook that lands again, like kind of one of those half hook, half uppercuts, I think. Like a 45-degree hook or whatever. He really knocks him down. And the fight could have been stopped, but Jack Reese, who's one of my favorite refs, again, likes the long counts. And that's a good thing. At a championship, guys, again, this is another side point. At a championship level, with undefeated fighters, with the belt on the line, you cannot stop these fights early. You have to allow these fighters to really kind of put some work in it, especially in the second round. Yes, he was hurt. Yes, it would have been reasonable to stop it, of course. But undefeated fighters, they never tasted a loss. They'll come out, they can recover, they're young. So I'm happy that Jack Reese allowed him to continue. Although you could say that, well, he got KO'd even worse because of that. Sure. But here we are, and Donaire is absolutely a first ballot Hall of Famer. He goes and now has the rematch with Inoue, which, again, is not a guarantee that Inoue wins. Donaire really hurt him in that fight. Really hurt Inoue. He is at 118. Donaire is an absolute monster, even at the advanced age of 38. Now, guys, if you saw the graphics during the fight, they were showing the oldest champs of this weight class, and pretty much nobody's even remotely competitive above the age of 35 at this light. That's just the nature of the game down here. But Donaire at 118 is just a monster, an absolute monster. Practically unbeatable down here. And it's really, really difficult. It goes to show you just how amazing Inoue is, that he beat Donaire in a slugfest. But did Donaire crack Inoue a little bit, crack that chin a little bit? He may have. We'll have to see. He may have. Because, yeah, Inoue kind of more or less easily got through Jason Maloney, but he's going to taste that hook again. Donaire's always going to land that hook. And he seems still, in terms of not so much on his feet, but his hand speed was still there, Donaire's. So I think the rematch is next. I think this is going to be for the undisputed, because I think Inoue has got 2 of the belts. But, for a unification like this, at 118, this is I think this is the fight to make after Inoue gets through Dos Marinas, which I think he will. He's fighting him in 2 weeks, not 3 weeks. So again, in terms of us bettors, it was a good weekend. Like I said, we made the over 7.5, and now we won on the Donaire fight. And again, that was a very easy call to make. Like sometimes not only do styles make fights, but you have to look at the angles, what the punches are being. What is the fighter known for? In this case, again, Donaire was a left hook guy, and this guy was short. So again, easy to predict this fight. We did wind up losing on our kind of like meme bet, right, which was the Shane Mosley Jr. fight versus Jason Quigley, but it was a close one. That fight could have went either way. It was a close decision win for Jason Quigley, and that would have been absolutely hilarious. It would have been a 100% win through for the weekend. But again, I don't bet at the World Championship level with an unproven fighter. I never bet on a British Isles fighter. Never do it. We'll always bet against him. So, Shane Mosley Jr. nearly continued that trajectory. And, of course, before on the undercard of the Donaire fight, we had Matthias fight against the Kazakh. And Matthias is just, he's the choo-choo train. He reminds me of, like, a good Angulo. Like, Angulo, when Angulo was, like, at his prime, Matthias reminds me of that, but better. He just keeps coming. He just keeps coming. He keeps throwing. He doesn't do anything particularly at the A level, but he's just, he just keeps going. He has enough pop. He breaks you down. He will destroy young champions. Like, if you're a young guy, the last kind of fighter you want to fight is Matthias. Oh boy, that's a great fighter. That's a great fighter to watch. And I feel sorry for whatever young guy gets thrown in there. Of course, he's a beatable guy. He did lose to Petros Anayanyan, and Anayanyan's not a particularly good fighter, but he could be outboxed over 10 rounds. But he is, like, if you get cutesy with him, you try to fight with him, he will absolutely walk you down. And unfortunately, the tragic, we saw Maxim Dadashev lose his life in a fight with Matthias 2 years ago, and we saw it on ESPN. And again, it was quite a horrific thing, and again reminds us that these kind of insane fights where, like, both guys are sort of grinders, so they're just standing there throwing punches. Man, these guys don't have a good end of life health span. They really don't. Everyone loves fighters that get into wars, but CTE is a thing. We know this now. We know that the pugilist dementia is a thing. These fighters who take a lot of damage, they're not the same later in life. And we saw with Maxim, he lost his life in this fight. And we should all appreciate these guys while they're here, while they're young. And this Kazakh guy that he beat, Jukmabayev, was undefeated, actually. He was 18-0 with 14 knockouts, so himself having a little bit of pop. So this was a pretty legit win for Matthias. So, again, that's going to do it for me. I hope we all had a great weekend. I hope we all enjoy our week, enjoy the Memorial Day. And that's going to do it for me. I'll see you guys on a Thursday. It's over.
I'm going to go home and break my wife's hip.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece, though.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong, man. Good boy. Just.